The first morning Lyra walked without assistance. The entire courtyard pretended not to watch. But they did. Not openly, not cruelly, just carefully. Word had spread quickly through the capital territory. The rejected Omega who saved the AlphaKing's nephew. The woman who nearly burned out her own life force to keep a child breathing. Stories grew in whispers. But Lyra did not hear most of them. She was too focused on placing one steady foot in front of the other. The winter air felt different here, cleaner, thinner, touched by mountain winds. The stone stronghold rose behind her like something ancient and unshakable. She felt small walking beside it. Tarin held her hand. He had insisted, not because she needed balance, but because he needed reassurance. You walk slower than Uncle Kael, he informed her solemnly. She glanced down at him. Your uncle has longer legs. That's not why. Oh, he walks like nothing can hurt him. Lyra's smile softened faintly. Everyone can be hurt. Tarin considered that deeply. From the balcony above, Kael watched the two of them cross the courtyard. He did not hover. He did not interfere. But he observed. Not as a king assessing risk, as a man learning something fragile. Lyra moved carefully, not timidly but cautiously, as if she expected the ground beneath her to shift at any moment, and she had not yet learned. This place would hold. Healing did not come all at once. Her strength returned, slowly and evenly. Some mornings she felt almost whole. Others, the energy inside her flickered weakly, reminding her how close she had come to losing everything. Elder Myrene remained firm in her guidance. You will not push your gift again until your body is ready, the elder warned. Lyra nodded obediently. She had never been someone who defied wisdom. But her true challenge was not physical, it was emotional. She did not know how to exist where she was not unwanted. The Capital Pack did not treat her as an outsider. They greeted her respectfully. They thanked her quietly. No one mocked her Omega status. No one questioned her presence, and yet she still felt like she was standing at the edge of something she did not belong to. Kael noticed, of course he did. He noticed how she stood slightly behind others during gatherings. How she never spoke first. How she never assumed space, so he made space for her without drawing attention to it. At council meetings, he invited her to observe, not as decoration, as witness. Your insight may prove valuable, he told her calmly the first time. She had blinked in confusion. Mine? Yes. No explanation, no flattery, just certainty. She attended, she listened. And when she finally offered a quiet suggestion about border patrol routes based on her familiarity with southern terrain, Kael did not hesitate. We will adjust accordingly, he said. The council did not argue, because when Kael decided something, it was rarely impulsive. Lyra felt something shift that day. Not power recognition, Tarin single quotes s. Attachment grew naturally. He began seeking her out before meals, before lessons, before sleep. He did not call her mother. He did not need to. He simply leaned against her when he felt uncertain. One evening, after a thunderstorm rolled over the mountains, Tarin appeared at her chamber door. He did not knock loudly, just enough. Lyra opened it and found him clutching a blanket. May I sit? He asked quietly. Of course. He curled beside the small hearth while rain tapped against the windows. I used to hide when storms came, he admitted. Before you. Lyra studied him gently. Storms are loud. It's okay to feel afraid. I wasn't afraid of thunder. She waited. I was afraid. No one would come if I called. Her breath stilled. She moved closer, not overwhelming him. Someone will always come now, she promised softly. He believed her, because she had proven it once. Already outside the chamber, Kael stood unseen in the corridor. He had not meant to overhear, but the words settled deep inside his chest. Someone will always come now. He closed his eyes briefly. That was what a Luna did. Not rule, not command, but ensure no child feared being unheard. Their bond, Kael and Lyra's, did not ignite in fire. It unfolded in quiet moments, shared silences, and measured conversations. He never entered her space without knocking, never assumed her time. When he asked her to walk beside him along the mountain ridge one afternoon, he phrased it carefully. If you would join me, not come, not I need, just invitation. The path was narrow but safe. Snow dusted the peaks beyond the valley. For a long time, they walked without speaking. It was not uncomfortable, it was steady. You are different here, Kael said at last. She glanced at him cautiously. Different how? You breathe easier. She considered denying it, but honesty felt simpler. Yes, he nodded once. I am glad. Silence returned. Then, softly, she asked, why do you not press the bond? He did not pretend ignorance. I will not claim what is not freely given. Her step slowed. You feel it too. Yes. No drama, no hunger, just truth. And if I never accept it? She asked quietly. His answer did not come immediately, because it mattered. Then I will remain grateful for the life you saved, he said, and I will respect your choice. Her heart tightened, unexpectedly, because she had never before been offered love without condition. They resumed walking. The thread between them pulsed faintly. Not urgent, patient. Weeks passed. Lyra began assisting in the infirmary under Elder Myrene's supervision, not using her rare healing gift, only learning herbs, remedies, careful care. She listened more than she spoke, but the injured wolves responded to her presence. They relaxed when she entered. Even hardened warriors softened under her quiet voice. Your strength is not in power, Myrene observed one afternoon. It is in steadiness. Lyra absorbed the words silently. No one had ever described her as strong without adding for an omega. Here, she was simply strong. The council eventually addressed the unspoken truth. She cannot remain indefinitely without title, one elder said, cautiously. Kael's gaze did not waver. She remains because she chooses to. And if she accepts the Luna bond, then she will stand beside me as equal, not beneath, not behind, beside. The message was clear. Lyra was not leverage, she was not obligation, she was choice. The true shift came quietly, as most meaningful things did. Tarin fell ill late one night, nothing life-threatening, just fever from overexertion. But fear resurfaced quickly. Lyra did not hesitate. She stayed beside him through the night. Cool cloth against his brow. Soft reassurances whispered in the dark. When Kael entered near dawn, he found them both asleep. Tarin curled into her side, Lyra's arm protectively around him. Exhaustion lined her face, but peace rested there too. Kael stood watching for a long time. This was not duty, not obligation. No one required her to sit there. She simply chose to. Again and again. He stepped closer quietly. Tarin stirred first, blinking sleepily. Uncle, he mumbled. Kael crouched near the bed, How do you feel? Better, the boy whispered. She stayed. Kael's gaze shifted to Lyra as she woke. Slowly, their eyes met in the early light. Something unspoken passed between them. Not urgency, not claim, understanding. You stayed, yes. He reached forward, not to claim her hand, but to brush a loose strand of hair from her face. The gesture was careful, asking if she did not pull away. That was enough. Later that day, as snow began falling lightly across the valley, Tarin ran ahead in the courtyard. Laughing again, Lyra stood watching him. Kael joined her. You give him courage, he said. He gives me reason, she replied. He studied her profile. You belong here. The words were not command, not persuasion, simply observation. She inhaled slowly. I am beginning to feel that. And, for the first time since her rejection, the idea of belonging did not frighten her. It warmed her. That evening, as lanterns glowed softly throughout the stronghold, Lyra stood at her window. She could leave. She knew that no guard would stop her, no chain bound her. But her heart no longer felt like it was standing outside a closed door. It felt invited. A gentle knock sounded. Kael, he stepped inside only after she nodded. I wished to ask you something, he said. She waited. Not as your king. The air shifted subtly. As a man, her breath caught faintly. I do not ask for answer tonight, he continued. Or tomorrow. He stepped closer, but not too close. I ask only this. When you consider your future, consider it here as well. No pressure, no claim, just hope. Her eyes softened. I will, she whispered. And when he left, the room did not feel emptier. It felt steadier. The bond between them did not blaze. It glowed like hearthfire, patient, warm, waiting, and for the first time in her life, Lyra did not feel invisible. She felt seen, not because she saved a cub, not because she might become Luna, but because someone powerful had looked at her quiet strength and chosen to value it, not rush it, not own it, value it. When slowly, gently, trust began to take root. The last candidate stood in the center of the clearing with her chin lifted just a little too high. The wind moved through the tall pines in a long, patient breath, carrying with it the scent of winter softened. The mountains did not lose their snow, but the air carried a different promise, now less sharp, less biting. Lyra felt it in herself too. Healing was no longer fragile. It was steady, not because pain had disappeared, but because it no longer defined her. She stood in the courtyard one early morning, watching Tarin practice shifting under the guidance of the training master. He stumbled, frustrated, then tried again. He did not look around to see who was watching. He already knew she would be there. Kael approached quietly, hands clasped behind his back. You've changed him, he said. Lyra shook her head gently. He was always strong. Strength grows where it feels safe. She turned slightly toward him. And you've given him that? He studied her for a long moment. And you have given it to me. The words were simple, unadorned, but they carried weight because Kael did not speak. Carelessly, Lyra felt the bond between them, not pulling, not demanding, just present, waiting. The council gathered that evening in the great hall, not for politics, not for war, for acknowledgment. Word had spread beyond the capital territory of what the rejected Omega had done. Visiting elders, allied leaders, they all knew. But Lyra did not stand before them in borrowed silk. She wore simple woven fabric. She stood as she always had quiet, steady. Kael did not stand in front of her. He stood beside her. My people, he began, voice calm and resonant. There are many ways to measure strength. The hall fell. Silent. Power. Rank. Bloodline. His gaze shifted briefly toward Lyra. But the truest strength is choice. He did not recount her sacrifice in dramatic detail. He did not parade her pain. He simply told the truth. She chose to protect a child who was not hers. She chose compassion over survival. She chose us when she had no reason to. The hall remained still, not because they were commanded to be silent, but because they were moved. Kael then turned to her fully. In this pack, no one is bound by force. His voice softened slightly. You owe us nothing. Lyra's heartbeat quickened, not with fear, with awareness. But if you choose to remain, if you choose to stand beside me, you will not stand beneath my shadow. He extended his hand, not as alpha, as equal. No pressure followed, no expectation. The silence that filled the hall was not tense, it was respectful, because this moment belonged to her. Lyra looked at his hand, then at Tarin, seated near the front, eyes wide but hopeful. Then at the wolves who had once been strangers and were now something else, not owners, not judges, a family. She thought of the southern pack, of being unseen, of shrinking herself to survive. Then she thought of stormy nights and small hands gripping hers, of council tables where her voice had been heard, of a king who had never once tried to cage her. The bond between them warmed gently like sunlight after frost. She stepped forward, placed her hand in his. I choose, she said, softly, not loudly, not dramatically, but it carried to every corner of the hall. A breath seemed to release from the room all at once. Kael did not pull her closer immediately. He simply closed his fingers around hers, careful, grounding. I am honored, he replied. Not triumphant, not possessive, honored. There was no extravagant coronation that night, no overwhelming display. Instead, lanterns were lit across the courtyard. Food was shared. Laughter rose gently into the winter sky. Lyra stood beside Kael, not as ornament, not as symbol, but as presence. Tarin ran between them at one point, grabbing both their hands. Does this mean you're staying forever? He asked bluntly. Lyra crouched to his level. It means I am staying as long as I am wanted. Tarin frowned fiercely. You are. Kael knelt beside them. You are, he echoed. And this time, Lyra believed it without hesitation. The bond sealed later quietly. Not in spectacle, not in urgency. In Kael's private chambers, beneath the open balcony where moonlight poured silver across the stone floor. He did not touch her until she stepped closer first. He did not speak of destiny, he spoke of partnership. Walk with me, he murmured, double quotes, always, she answered when their foreheads touched. The bond settled fully, not blazing, not overwhelming. It felt like coming home, warm, steady, certain. No dominance, no loss of self. Only connection. Months later, the valley felt different, not because a new Luna ruled, but because the atmosphere had changed. There was less fear in the pack, more listening, more patience. Lyra often sat in the courtyard with Tarin curled beside her, reading from old histories while Kael trained warriors nearby. Sometimes he would glance toward them mid-instruction, not distracted, grounded, at peace. One evening, as twilight painted the sky lavender and gold, Lyra stood again at her window. But this time, she did not feel like a guest. She felt rooted. Kael entered without urgency, pausing to meet her gaze. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. She crossed the space between them. "No." The answer came easily, because this choice had never been about crowns or destiny. It had been about belonging. He wrapped his arms around her, not possessively, protectively, and she leaned into him not because she needed saving, but because she wanted to. Below them, Tarin's laughter echoed through the courtyard, safe, unafraid, certain someone would always come if he called. Lyra closed her eyes briefly. Once, she had been invisible. Once, she had been rejected. But kindness had not hardened inside her. It had endured, and in the end, it had built a home. Not through force, not through fate alone, but through choice, through patience, through the quiet courage of staying. And as the first stars appeared above the mountain peaks, the AlphaKing and his chosen Luna stood side by side, not because they were destined, but because they had both, in their own ways, chosen love, damp earth and distant rain. Around the wide circle of stone markers, ranked wolves stood shoulder to shoulder, their cloaks heavy with embroidery that marked lineage and status. Every eye was fixed on the woman in the center. She had strength. That much was obvious. Her posture was flawless, her gaze unwavering. But when the waiting stretched longer than she expected, something shifted. The AlphaKing stood at the edge of the raised stone platform, hands loosely clasped behind his back. His expression revealed nothing. He had given no instructions beyond a single phrase earlier that morning. "You may begin." And so she had begun. She stood tall. She waited. She endured. Minutes passed. Then more. A murmur began at the outer ring of the gathered pack. The candidate's breath grew slightly sharper. Her eyes flickered toward the Alpha, searching for guidance. None came. The test was not visible. It was not a show of power, not a display of command. It was something quieter, something that pressed against patience, against humility. When she finally spoke, her voice carried frustration beneath its composure. "What is required of me, my king?" The clearing seemed to exhale. The Alpha's gaze rested on her gently. "Nothing more," he replied. And in that moment, the faint tightening at the corners of her mouth told him what he needed to know. One by one, they had come before him that morning, ranked daughters of strong bloodlines, confident, polished, prepared for challenge. One by one, they had faltered not through weakness of body, but through restlessness of spirit. The clearing had begun to feel heavy with disappointment. Then came the sound, soft, broken, not the sound of pride cracking, but something smaller. A faint whimper from beyond the circle. Heads turned. From between the dark trunks of the trees, a small wolf cub staggered forward. His fur was dulled with dust and ash. One foreleg trembled visibly. His ribs showed faintly beneath thin skin. His eyes, too large for his small face, searched without focus. He took two uncertain steps into the clearing. Then his legs gave way. He collapsed onto the cold earth. The sound of his body hitting the ground was quiet enough to be mistaken for nothing. But everyone heard it. Silence followed, not the controlled silence of a trial of a different kind. The candidates glanced at one another. Was this part of the test? Was compassion being weighed? If they stepped forward too quickly, would they appear impulsive? If they hesitated, would they appear heartless? No one wanted to misstep in front of the AlphaKing. The cub whimpered again, a thin, exhausted sound that barely rose above the wind. Still no one moved. At the far edge of the gathered pack outside the marked stones, beyond the line of ranked wolves, someone She had not been standing among the candidates. She had not been dressed for trial. She had come only to carry fresh water at dawn and then remain unseen. The rejected Omega. Her cloak was plain, the hem slightly frayed from daily work in the healing den. Her hair was loosely tied back, strands slipping free in the breeze. She did not look at the candidates. She did not look at the Alpha. She looked at the cub, and she stepped across the invisible boundary that none of the others dared to cross. A guard shifted uneasily. She was not called, but she did not pause. She knelt in the dirt beside the fallen cub, her knees pressing into cold earth without hesitation. She removed her cloak and wrapped it around his shaking body, shielding him from the wind. "It's all right," she whispered. Her voice was low, not for the crowd, for him. The cub flinched at first, then sagged against her as if recognizing something safe. She placed one hand gently against his chest and closed her eyes. She listened, not with ears alone. She listened for rhythm, for breath, for fear. The cub's trembling eased by a fraction. The clearing watched. A murmur rose again, sharper now. She interferes. She breaks the boundary. She is not a candidate. The Omega did not respond when a guard stepped closer, uncertain. She shook her head faintly. "It's shaking," she said softly, not as a challenge, as a truth. The guard looked toward the Alpha. The AlphaKing had not moved from his place. His gaze remained steady, not on the candidates who had frozen, but on the woman kneeling in the dirt. There was no defiance in her posture, in no calculation, only instinct. "Begin the trial," he said quietly. The word settled over the clearing like falling snow. The candidates stiffened. The trial had not ended. It had only just begun. Before that day, she had learned how to move without drawing notice. She rose before dawn, when the sky was still a pale wash of gray, and the air carried the quiet chill of morning. The healing den welcomed her at that hour. Shelves of dried herbs waited to be sorted. Mortar and pestle waited to grind roots into powder. Bowls needed scrubbing. Cloths needed rinsing. And she preferred work that kept her hands busy. It left less room for memory. Years ago, she had stood in a different clearing. She had stood beside a wolf who had once promised her forever. Before witnesses, before elders, before the pack. His voice had not been cruel. It had been calm, measured, decided. "I release this bond." The words had echoed more sharply than any shouted insult. He had chosen a higher ranked she-wolf status over heart. The rejection had been clean, public, final. Since then, she did not stand in circles. She stood at the edges at mealtimes. She waited until others filled their plates. If portions ran thin, she smiled and said she was not hungry. During gatherings, she lingered near walls, ready to carry dishes away before anyone asked. It was not that she believed she deserved less, it was that she had stopped expecting more. The pack had not been unkind to her. Not openly, but invisibility has its own weight. Younger wolves sometimes mirrored the dismissive tilt of older ones' heads when she passed. Conversation softened when she approached, not out of secrecy, but lack of interest. She learned to make herself smaller, quieter, yet something within her refused to harden. A young wolf, trembling before his first border patrol, had once sat alone near the forest edge. She had joined him without invitation, speaking softly until his breathing steadied. An elder with aching joints found relief when she warmed stones by the fire and wrapped them carefully in cloth. For tired hands, she did not do these things for praise. She did them because someone had to. From time to time, She felt a gaze on her during gatherings. Calm, observant. The AlphaKing was not a ruler who demanded constant attention. He did not shout orders across the courtyard. He did not raise his voice in anger when disputes rose. He listened. He watched. He noticed who spoke loudly and who never did. She did not know he had noticed her long before the trial. When news of the Luna trial spread, excitement rippled through ranked families. Names were whispered in corners. Predictions exchanged with thin smiles. She heard the talk while grinding herbs. She did not imagine herself there. That world was not hers. Still, she wondered what kind of woman would stand beside a king who valued silence more than applause. On the morning of the final trial, she brought fresh water to the clearing before the sun rose fully. She placed the bowls near the stones and stepped back into the outer ring. Once the candidates assembled, invisibly comfortable in that place, until a small, trembling life stumbled into the center, and she chose not to remain invisible. The memory of the cub's fragile body against her chest would stay with her long after the wind faded from that morning, because in kneeling for him, she had crossed more than a boundary in the dirt. She had stepped into a circle she never believed would open for her, and the AlphaKing had seen it. The clearing did not return to the same silence after the Alpha's words, "Begin the trial." They did not dismiss her. They did not correct her. They did not command her to step back. The permission settled over the space like something fragile and sacred. The rejected Omega remained on her knees in the dirt, her cloak wrapped around the trembling cub. His body was small and fever-warm beneath her hands. To warm, the candidates shifted where they stood. This was not the trial they had imagined. There was no duel, no demonstration of dominance, no test of lineage or strength. Only a frail, frightened child, and a woman who had stepped forward without invitation. The cub's breathing came in shallow pulls, each inhale catching at the end as though he feared even air might abandon him. His eyes were unfocused, glassy with exhaustion. When she brushed her thumb gently behind his ear, he flinched once, then stilled. "It's all right," she murmured again. Her voice carried no performance, no awareness of the watching pack. She leaned closer, angling her body to shield him from the wind that cut through the clearing. The earth beneath her knees was cold, and damp seeped slowly into her skirts. But she did not shift. A guard stepped nearer, uneasy. "The healer will attend," he said carefully. "You may step back." She did not look at him. "It isn't only his body," she replied softly. "He's afraid." A few of the candidates exchanged tight glances. One folded her arms. Another lifted her chin, irritation sharpening her features. If this was the test, why had they been left standing idle? Why was an Omega allowed to alter the balance of it? The AlphaKing descended from the stone platform without haste. His boots pressed quietly into the dirt as he moved closer. The shift in air that followed him was subtle but undeniable. Conversation stilled. He stopped several paces away from where she knelt. "You crossed the boundary of the trial," he said, his tone even at the sound of his voice so near. She finally lifted her eyes. There was no defiance in them, only concern. "I did," she answered. "And you understand that you were not called?" "Yes." Her fingers tightened slightly in the cub's fur as another tremor passed through him. "I did not think of the circle," she added after a breath. "I thought of him." A murmur moved through the gathered wolves, quieter this time, less certain. The Alpha's gaze remained steady on her face. He did not look at the candidates. "You may continue," he said. The guard hesitated but stepped back. The candidates stiffened. Hours earlier, they had been told the final test required patience. They had stood in silence, believing endurance itself would earn favor. Now patience meant something else. Now it meant watching someone else choose. The elder healer approached slowly, her silver hair braided tightly against the wind. She knelt beside the Omega and placed a weathered hand against the cub's brow. Her expression shifted. "The fever is high," she murmured. The Omega swallowed. "I know." The cub whimpered weakly and turned his face into her chest. His fingers curled into the fabric of her tunic. Clutching with surprising desperation, she felt it like a plea. The healer's gaze lingered on the Omega's hand resting against the cub's heart. "You have always had steadiness," the elder said quietly, "but this one carries more than fever." The Omega knew what that meant. Fear that had rooted too deep. Shock that had never been soothed. The border conflict had taken more than territory. It had taken homes, parents, safety. This cub had likely run until his legs failed. "Can you bring the fever down?" the Omega asked. "With herbs," the healer replied. "Perhaps." Slowly, the cub's breath hitched again, sharper this time, but not quickly enough. The Omega whispered. The healer met her eyes, then truly met them. "There is another way," the elder said carefully. A faint ripple of tension passed through the clearing. Those closest leaned in slightly, sensing the weight of what was unsaid. The calming transfer was rarely spoken of openly. It required one wolf to absorb the emotional chaos of another. Taking fear into oneself in order to give peace, it was not dangerous when done lightly. But this cub did not carry light fear. "He is small," the healer said, "but the terror is large." The Omega felt her own heartbeat quicken. She knew the cost. She had used her gift before in fragments, seizing anxiety before patrols, soothing grief in the healing den. Never like this, never in full. "Not her," one candidate muttered under her breath. "She has no rank for such risk." The words were not shouted. They did not need to be. The Omega heard them anyway. Rank. Always. Rank. Her shoulders remained still. The Alpha's gaze flickered briefly toward the whispering candidate, but he did not rebuke her. His attention returned to the Omega. "You are not required to do this," he said quietly. The statement was not public, it was for her. She met his eyes again. "I know," she replied. And she did. No law demanded her sacrifice. No command bound her. The cub's body jerked with another tremor. Her choice did not feel heroic. It felt simple. "I will do it," she said. The healer inhaled sharply. "You have already given much these past months. You have not rested. I can rest later." Her voice did not rise, it steadied. The Alpha stepped one pace closer, not invading, not imposing. "If you begin," he said, "you must stop when told." A small, almost invisible flicker of surprise crossed her face. He was not forbidding her. He was protecting her. She nodded once. The cub's claws dug weakly into her sleeve as though sensing the shift about to happen. She adjusted him gently so that his head rested over her heart. She brushed damp strands of fur from his brow. The clearing grew impossibly quiet. Even the wind seemed to slow. She closed her eyes. Inside herself, she searched for the place she guarded carefully. The calm she had cultivated in the years since her rejection. The deep well of stillness she had built because no one else would anchor her. She opened it, not all at once, carefully, like lifting a door that had long remained shut. She pressed her palm flat against the cub's chest. "Breathe with me," she whispered. The cub could not understand her words fully, but he felt the rhythm, she slowed her own breath. Intentionally inhale, exhale. At first, his breathing continued in frantic bursts, but gradually, almost imperceptibly, it began to mirror hers. The shift in the air was subtle, not light, not sound, but something deeper. The Alpha felt it immediately, a tightening in his chest, not unpleasant, but aware. The healer's eyes widened slightly. The transfer had begun. The cub's trembling eased by degrees. His claws loosened from her sleeve. His breath, though still uneven, no longer raced toward panic. But, as his fear lessened, her chest tightened. The first wave hit like cold water. Images, not her own, brushed against her mind. Smoke, shouting, the sound of something breaking. She did not pull back. The clearing held its breath. The candidates who had once stood proud now watched with uncertainty that bordered on uneasy. Compassion was no longer abstract, it had weight, and she was carrying it. Sweat gathered at her temple despite the chill wind. Her shoulders trembled faintly. The healer leaned closer. That is enough, the elder murmured softly. The Omega shook her head once. Not yet. The cub's fever still burned beneath her hand. Another wave came stronger. This one carried loneliness, the kind that hollowed from the inside. Her own past stirred in response, memories of standing alone in a different clearing, hearing her bonds severed before witnesses. For a fleeting moment, her breath faltered. The Alpha's fingers curled slightly at his sides. He did not touch her. He would not break her chosen path. But he was ready. The cub exhaled suddenly in a long, shuddering breath. The fever began to break. Those closest felt it before. They saw it, the air around them loosening. Relief spread through the clearing in a quiet ripple. But she did not feel relief, not yet. The fear she had drawn from him settled deeper into her chest, heavy and sharp, her vision blurred at the edges. The healer reached for her wrist. Enough, she said more firmly this time. The Omega opened her eyes. They were dimmer now. The cub lay limp in her arms, not from weakness, but from sleep. Deep, healing sleep. The trembling had stopped. She felt it then. The moment he was safe. A soft release. She allowed herself one small breath of relief, and then the strength left her. Her hand slipped from his chest. The world tilted and she heard the healer's voice distantly. She felt herself sway, and somewhere through the dimming haze, she became aware of one more thing: the Alpha stepping forward. Not in command, in protection. The moment she began to fall, the world seemed to slow. Her fingers slipped from the cub's fur first. Then her shoulders tilted forward. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The Alpha reached her before her body struck the earth. His hand caught her at the back of her shoulders, steady and firm. His other arm slid beneath her knees as the healer gathered the sleeping cub away from her chest. She was lighter than he expected, not fragile, but emptied, her head tipped back against his forearm, dark lashes resting against pale skin. Her breathing was shallow. Too shallow, her pulse. He asked quietly. The elder healer pressed trembling fingers to the inside of the Omega's wrist. "It is there," the healer said after a tense pause. But faint. The clearing remained silent. The candidates who had stood so proud hours before now looked uncertain. Some avoided looking at the woman who had just collapsed for a cub none of them had touched. The Alpha did not look at them. "The trial is concluded," he said evenly. There was no anger in his voice, no accusation, only finality. A few gasps broke from the circle. A candidate's lips parted as though to protest, But the words died unspoken. The trial had shifted beyond them. It had revealed something none of them had expected. The Alpha adjusted his hold on the Omega, lifting her fully into his arms. Her head rested against his chest, her hair falling loose where the wind had tugged it free. She did not stir. The cub whimpered faintly in the healer's grasp. As though sensing distance, the Alpha paused only long enough to glance at the small wolf. "It is all right," he murmured, not loudly, not for display. Then he turned and carried her from the clearing. The path from the trial grounds to the Alpha's quarters wound through tall pines and narrow stone steps carved into the hillside. Normally, he would walk that path alone, or with guards keeping a respectful distance. Now he moved steadily, careful not to jar her. Her breathing brushed faintly against the fabric of his tunic. To faint. The healer walked close behind, the cub bundled carefully in thick cloth against her chest. "She took too much," the healer said softly as they reached the upper terrace. The fear was rooted deep. "She knew the cost," the Alpha replied. "Yes," the healer agreed. "But knowing does not lessen the toll." He pushed open the heavy wooden doors to his private healing chamber. The hearth inside had already been lit earlier in the morning, anticipating the long hours of the trial. Warmth greeted them immediately. He crossed to the wide bed near the fire and laid her down, carefully against the woven blankets. Her skin felt cool despite the exertion. The healer set the cub on a nearby pallet and moved to gather herbs from a cabinet carved into the stone wall. The Alpha remained standing beside the bed. For a moment, he simply watched her. Her face, absent the tension of effort, looked younger, softer. Not because she lacked strength, but because she no longer had to hold it upright. "She has carried more than others see," the healer said quietly while crushing dried leaves in a mortar. "I know," he replied. The healer paused and looked at him. "You have known for some time." He did not deny it. He had noticed her long before the trial. The way younger wolves calmed when she approached. The way disputes lowered in volume in her presence. The way she absorbed tension without demanding acknowledgment. "She believes she is invisible," the healer added, his gaze returned to her still form. "She is not." The healer prepared a steaming infusion and lifted the Omega's head slightly, coaxing a small sip past her lips. Most of it dribbled down her chin. "She must wake on her own," the healer said. "The transfer drains not only strength, but boundaries. She will need rest to rebuild them. And if she does not wake." The question was quiet, measured. The healer did not answer immediately. "She will," the elder said finally. "She has anchored others for years. She knows how to return." The cub stirred on the pallet and gave a faint whine. The Alpha stepped away from the bed and crouched beside him. The small wolf's eyes opened slowly, blinking against the warm light. For a moment confusion clouded them, then recognition. He struggled to sit upright, searching the room. The Alpha did not reach for him. He waited. The cub spotted the Omega on the bed and let out a thin sound of distress. The healer moved to soothe him, but the Alpha raised a hand gently. "Let him come." The cub slid awkwardly from the pallet and padded across the floor. Still weak but steadier than before, he reached the bedside and lifted himself on trembling forepaws, peering at her unmoving face. His ears flattened. He made a small, questioning sound. The Alpha stepped behind him, placing a careful hand at the cub's back, not restraining, only steadying. "She gave her strength," he said softly. "Now she must gather it again." The cub's gaze remained fixed on her. He did not cry. He simply stayed. Hours passed. The fire burned low, then was fed again. The healer moved quietly in and out of the chamber, checking pulse and breath, applying cool cloths to her brow. The Alpha did not leave. He removed his outer cloak and set it aside. He did not sit in his usual chair at the far side of the room. He sat on the edge of the bed, not touching close enough to feel the faint rise and fall of her breath. His thoughts were not loud. They were steady. He thought of the candidates of polished smiles and calculated patience. He thought of the moment she had said, "I did not think of the circle." I thought of him. There had been no ambition in her voice, no hope of reward, only instinct. He thought of how easily the pack overlooked such instinct. He thought of how often power was mistaken for leadership. The cub eventually curled at her side, resting his small head against her arm. The Alpha watched the contact carefully. Her fingers twitched once, barely, but he saw it return. He murmured under his breath, not commanding, inviting. The healer entered again as twilight deepened beyond the window. She stirs. The elder observed quietly. She hears, the Alpha replied. The healer regarded him with thoughtful eyes. You feel it, she said. He did not pretend ignorance. Yes, the bond between mates often arrived like a storm, sudden, undeniable. This was not that. This was quieter, like a thread drawn slowly between two steady hands. He had felt it during the transfer, a resonance in his chest when she opened herself fully to the cub's fear in not possession. Recognition. She must choose freely, the healer said softly. She will, he answered. The cub shifted again and pressed closer to her side. The room grew still. Night settled fully outside, wrapping the forest in shadow. Inside the chamber, warmth and breath remained. For a long time, nothing changed. Then a deeper inhale, a faint crease forming between her brows. Her lashes fluttered once, then stilled. The Alpha leaned forward slightly, careful not to startle her. Her fingers moved again, this time more clearly, curling faintly against the blanket. The cub lifted his head instantly. Her lips parted in a soft, almost inaudible sound, and the world, which had felt suspended since she fell, began to move again. The forest did not move when she fell. It only watched. The leaves above her stirred in a wind too soft to be called a storm. The last of her strength had left her body quietly, like breath on cold air. After she poured everything into the dying cub, Lyra did not remember the moment she hit the ground. She remembered only the warmth fading from her palms. She remembered the cub's heartbeat strengthening. And then nothing. By the time the patrol wolves arrived, dawn was bleeding slowly across the horizon. They had followed the scent of rogue blood. What they found instead was something none of them were prepared for. The small cub lay curled beside a still Omega, not abandoned, guarded, even unconscious. Her arm remained draped over him, as if she would protect him even in death. The lead guard shifted into human form first. His name was Garen, one of the AlphaKing's most trusted warriors. He had seen war. He had seen betrayal. He had seen wolves die for pride. He had never seen an Omega give her life for a cub who was not her own. He crouched carefully. The cub stirred, alive, weak, but alive, and beneath Lyra's skin, faint but steady, a heartbeat. She's breathing, Garen muttered, disbelief thick in his voice, and another guard frowned. That's the rejected one from the southern pack. Yes, Garen said quietly, and she just saved the AlphaKing's nephew. The words settled heavily between them, because this cub was not ordinary. He was Kael's blood, the future, and the rogues had targeted him for that very reason. When they carried Lyra through the forest toward the capital territory, The air itself seemed to shift. The AlphaKing felt it before he heard the report. Kael stood on the balcony of the stone stronghold overlooking the valley, when a sharp pulse struck through his chest. Not pain. Recognition. Something fragile had brushed against his wolf. Not claiming. Not demanding. Just reaching. His wolf stirred awake fully for the first time in weeks. Mate. The word was not loud. It was not roaring instinct. It was soft, concerned. Kael stiffened. He did not move toward the feeling immediately. He had trained himself not to react to instinct alone. Power required discipline. Instead, he waited and then he saw them. His patrol entering the courtyard. Garen carrying a small cub. Another warrior holding the limp body of a woman. The scent hit him before he reached the stairs. Blood, omega, and something else. Sacrifice. Kael did not run, kings did not run. But he did not walk slowly either. By the time he reached the courtyard, the cub had shifted weakly into human form in Garen's arms. Alive. Kael's chest loosened slightly. Then his gaze shifted to her. Lyra looked smaller than he expected, pale still, as if the forest had nearly claimed her. Report, Kael said, voice steady. Garen bowed his head. Rogues attacked. The Omega found the cub first. She fought. Used some kind of rare healing energy. Nearly burned herself out. Kael stepped closer. He did not touch her immediately. But he felt it now. The thread between them, thin, frayed, real. His wolf did not surge with possessiveness, it ached. She saved him, Garen added quietly. Kael studied her face, no pride there, no ambition. Only exhaustion etched into fragile features. She is not from this pack, one guard said carefully. No, Kael agreed. She is now. The decision was simple, immediate, not because of the bond, but because she had chosen his blood over her own survival. And that was a debt he would not ignore. Take them both to the inner infirmary, Kael ordered. Summon Elder Myrene. The inner infirmary was quiet stone and warm lantern light. No noise, no chaos. Only careful breathing and patient hands. Elder Myrene had served 3 AlphaKings before Kael. She was small, silver-haired, and unafraid of anyone. When she laid her hand over Lyra's heart, her brow furrowed. She gave too much, the elder murmured. Will she live? Kael asked. If her will matches her sacrifice. Yes. Kael did not leave. He stood near the bed but not too close. He did not claim the space. He simply remained. Hours passed. The cub Tarin awoke first, confused, afraid, until he saw Kael. Then he clung to him, trembling. She stayed, the boy whispered. She told me I wasn't alone. Kael's throat tightened. He glanced toward the unconscious Omega. Even in stillness, she seemed to be listening. You are not alone, Kael assured the cub quietly. But his eyes remained on her. Lyra surfaced slowly, like someone rising through deep water. She felt warmth first, not cold. Not forest dirt. Warm blankets. Safe air. Her lashes fluttered. The ceiling above her was stone, not sky. Panic tried to form until she sensed him, close, not looming. Not pressing, just present. Her gaze shifted weakly, and she saw him. The AlphaKing. She knew him instantly. Every Omega knew Kael by reputation. Powerful. Unmated, unbending. But the man standing near her bed did not look unbending. He looked relieved. You're safe, he said simply. His voice was deep, but gentle, not claiming, not interrogating. Lyra tried to sit up. Pain flared sharply in her chest. Kael moved but stopped short of touching her. Slowly, he cautioned. Not a command, a concern. The cub, she whispered. Alive, he answered immediately. Because of you. Her eyes closed briefly in relief. That was enough. If she died now, it would have been worth it. You will not die, Kael said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. Her eyes opened again. Surprised, he did not smile. But something in his expression softened. You are under my protection, he continued. No one will cast you out again, double quotes again, he knew. Of course he knew, kings knew everything within their territories. Shame tried to creep into her chest. I did not save him for reward, she murmured. I know. That answer came too fast to be political, too certain. Silence settled between them. Not heavy, not awkward, just quiet. He pulled a chair closer, not beside her bed, but angled respectfully. You risked your life for a child who could not repay you, he said. She swallowed. He was afraid. That was explanation enough. Kael studied her carefully. No manipulation, no false humility. Only truth. You possess rare healing energy. Elder Myrene interjected from the corner. Where did you learn it? Lyra hesitated. It only comes when someone is truly in danger. The elder exchanged a knowing look with Kael. A gift tied to empathy, dangerous, powerful, rare. Kael leaned back slightly. You will remain here until your strength returns, he said. I cannot stay, Lyra whispered. Instinctively, my pack rejected you. He finished calmly, her silence confirmed it. You owe them nothing. The words struck her harder than any blow ever had. Because no one had ever said that before. You are free here, Kael added. To leave when you choose. Choose. Not ordered. Not bound. A tear slipped silently down her temple. She turned her face away. Embarrassed. Kael did not comment on it. He simply remained. Over the next days, Kael visited often. Not always speaking. Sometimes simply standing near the window while she slept. The cub, Tarin, began slipping into the room too, at first shy, then braver. He would sit beside her bed and hold her fingers gently. You smell like forest, he told her once seriously. She smiled faintly. You smell like trouble, he giggled. Kael watched those moments carefully. Not possessive, protective, but also something else. He saw how Lyra never asked for attention, never assumed she belonged, even when Tarin curled beside her as if she had always been his. One evening, as lantern light flickered gold across the stone walls, Kael spoke quietly. The council will question your presence. She stiffened slightly. I can leave before that. You will not. The firmness in his tone did not carry dominance. It carried decision. You saved the future of this pack, he said. You will be honored, not judged. She studied him, searching for political motive, finding none. And if I choose to leave? She asked softly. His wolf stirred painfully at the thought, but his voice remained steady. Then I will escort you safely to wherever you wish to go. Her breath caught, because that was the moment she realized he would never cage her, not even if she was his mate. The thread between them pulsed faintly. Not claiming, waiting. Kael felt it too, but he did not speak of it, not yet. She deserved healing first, trust first, choice first. That night, as Lyra drifted toward sleep, she sensed something new. Not fear, not rejection, protection. It wrapped around her like invisible warmth. Outside her chamber door, two guards stood watch, not to contain her, to guard her. And in his own chambers, Kael stood by the window overlooking the moonlit valley. His wolf was restless but calm. She is fragile, she is strong. She is ours. Kael closed his eyes. Not yet, he whispered to the instinct. She will choose. And for the first time in many seasons his wolf agreed, because this bond was not built on heat, or fate alone. It was built on sacrifice, on kindness, on the quiet way she held a dying child as if he mattered more than her own breath, and that was a Luna worthy of a king. Even if she did not know it yet, Lyra slept peacefully for the first time since her rejection. Not because she was claimed, not because she was promised a crown, but because someone powerful had looked at her broken strength and chosen to protect it. Not use it, not control it. Protect.